Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore. Time for another whiskey comparison video. Today we are headed to Speyside, Scotland. Speyside is a region along the River Spey, but for some reason these two distilleries that are in that region don't claim on their bottles Speyside. Aberlour, which is on the Lower Burn being a little creek or river, runs directly into the River Spey. So if anybody's going to call themselves a Speyside whiskey, it should be Aberlour, but in this particular case, they did not. The Balvenie is a little further back off, away from the river, but still, it is not that far away, and it could easily be called a Speyside, but they actually just say on their bottle that they are a single malt whiskey. So what gives? I don't know. But the reason why Aberlour can get away with calling themselves a Highland Scotch when they are in Speyside is because Speyside was actually created because there were so many distilleries along the River Spey. They just cut that right out of the Highlands. So it's actually in the Highlands. It's in the Highlands, put it that way. But it's not necessarily in the Highlands region. So there you go. Anyway, that's how all that works. So I'll have to ask them someday why they don't put Speyside on their whiskey. What's cool about Aberlour, I've been there, and it's a great little distillery to walk to, stay in Aberlour. It's a fantastic town. It's called Charlestown of Aberlour. You may find it that way on a map, or you'll just find it as Aberlour. Great little town. The Mash Tun is there, one of my favorite bars, and they have lodging there as well. And there's plenty of other places to stay in town as well. And then some nice restaurants and stuff. It's a great jumping off point for doing distillery tours because there are so many within a very small area. Like Glenfarclas is right down the road. Actually, just walking between these two, you can walk over to Glenfiddich. It's right next door to Balvenie, basically, owned by the same company. If you go the opposite direction, then you'll run into Craigellachie, although you can't tour Craigellachie. Then the Speyside cooperage is there, so you can go check out how they're assembling the barrels, and then you can go across the river and you can go to Macallan, and then you can walk down to Aberlour and see what's going on in Aberlour. So there's tons of things to see while you're there, lots of distilleries to go to, and you don't even, once you're going to go out to Glenfarclas, you're going to pick the car up and go, but you could potentially walk around to some of these other distilleries if you wanted to. Mortlach is also right down the road from Glenfiddich and the Balvenie. So these two whiskeys are very similar to each other in terms of their process of them being made. They're 12 years old, both of them. Aberlour is at 40% alcohol. This is 43% alcohol. They both go from American oak into Sherry Casks. So they both pick up some of that fruity influence. But they're actually very different in terms of their flavor and their nosing. So we're going to dive into both of these and get kind of a sense of what the difference is between the two. So this one gives me apple. I get like a red apple out of this. And there's like cereal grain, a little bit of that oak note in there, just a slight kind of musty oak in the background. Some baking spice. There's actually a little cacao. Is that how you pronounce it? Cacao, which is basically raw chocolate. Powdered. Have you ever had that powdered raw chocolate and tasted it by mistake? It smells like chocolate, but it's like a mouthful of bitter. Well, this isn't a mouthful of bitter, but there's something in that smell that I think of that when I nose this. This one has, I'd say, a red berry, like a raspberry. It's not tart, but definitely leaves that kind of an impression on you. And then it rolls off into the red apple again. There's a sweetness to it, but it's actually kind of halfway between sweet and dry to me on the finish. What's interesting is the apple, and maybe even a little vanilla, maybe, kind of lingers on the way out on that whiskey. Very clean though. Unfortunately, I believe both of these whiskeys use color. They both are suspiciously close to that Johnny Walker color range that I like to rate things against. So, not 100% sure on that, but they don't say on here that they're unchill filtered or that they don't use colorant. So, color, unfortunately, is one of those things that they, especially the larger manufacturers, tend to use the color. Sometimes color this dark and deep can come from the sherry casks, depending on how much time they spend in them. But I think in this case, these both have probably been doctored with a little bit of that colorant. So this one is so different. This is so different. I'm going to give you a little story on this Aberlour. Love the distillery. Really enjoyed my tour there. Got to taste 5 of their whiskeys. Abuna, which is their cask strength, was probably my favorite out of all of them. Just really nice, fruity kind of characteristics to the whiskey. And then I came home and I bought this Aberlour 12 and I tasted it and I went, I don't know what I was tasting it against. I forget what whiskeys I was tasting it next to, but for some reason I was just not impressed with it. It sat in my cabinet. 3 months later, tasted it again. I was like, I don't know why I was so harsh on this. It actually is interesting. There's some interesting things going on. Today, when I started doing the tasting, I'm like, man, I really like this. This is nice and fruity. On the nose, it reminds me of juicy fruit gum or double bubble. It reminds me of when I used to open up baseball card packs as a kid and it had that little stale piece of chewing gum in it. It's just that really kind of sweet, bubble gummy kind of thing going on in this. Some banana in there, a little caramel oak, a little hint of oak if you really draw on it. It's a much sweeter nose on this whiskey than the Balvenie is. The Balvenie goes more towards like your dark fruits, your red raspberry, your maybe a little bit of raisin. You get some raisin out of this too, but it's more of a sweetness. Oh, another nice rich whiskey. Caramel, raisins. The oils kind of linger in this one. Oh, and that apple or that raisin and kind of that kind of fig note that comes in there. It's clean. On the way out, it's just really nice, draws down. The raisin lingers a little bit and then it just kind of fades into obscurity. Really interesting whiskey. And the thing I'm thinking about with Aberlour is that I need to go buy another bottle of 12 right now and open it and pour me a glass and maybe not be as thrilled with it, but let it sit for 6 months and then go back and taste it and then I'm going to love it. Or maybe I'll just open it and I'll love it right off the bat. Maybe my palate has changed. And maybe because I'm now starting to really pull a lot of these flavors out of there, I'm getting this whiskey where I didn't really get it the first time I had it. I was unenthused about it the first time I had it. And it's really changed my opinion. And it'd be great to taste it at higher than 40% alcohol, but because I think more characteristics would come out of it, but it actually doesn't taste watered down to me, and it does very nicely. And if you're trying to introduce somebody into whiskeys, and you've had a bottle of this sitting around for a while, you might pour them a dram and see what they think. Because I think, especially for somebody who probably doesn't want something peaty, doesn't want something, because Speyside whiskeys are not going to have that smoky, peaty taste if they are the old traditional Speyside whiskeys. There are Speyside whiskeys that are peated. Benriach is a good example of that. They have a peated version, so don't take that as gospel that every Speyside whiskey is going to be a fruit bomb, because that is definitely not the case. But it's a semi-rule of thumb that you can follow. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tasting, and if you've tasted either of these, I'd love to hear your opinions on them. Leave comments. Have you tried something else by either of these, the Aberlour 16 or the Abuna or the Balvenie Caribbean Cask? A lot of people love that. It's a rum-finished Scotch whiskey. You know, some really interesting stuff out there. So love to hear your thoughts and opinions on those. And until next time, cheers and slán